Welcome to the Resiliency of the Human Spirit podcast, where we share all about human triumphs for the collective's healing and empowerment. I'm your host, Priscilla Hanley. My guest today is Adam Szecowka. Adam is an accomplished Reiki Master, energy healer, and autism transformational life coach. He specializes in remote house healing. By harnessing the power of energy, this practice not only supports the body's innate healing abilities, but also serves as a proactive measure to ward off any future health issues that may arise. Without further ado, I'm going to bring Adam on right now.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Priscilla, for inviting me. It's great to be on your podcast. Thank you.
Hi, Adam. Thank you so much for being here. The work that you're doing is so fascinating and interesting, and I don't think a lot of people are aware about the kind of work that you do. So I am excited to have you here to share your story and your work and really your life journey. So I will open the floor to you now, Adam, for you to share your journey with our audience and the work that you're doing and the lessons you've learned along the way.
Sure. Sure. Thank you, Priscilla, for giving me the opportunity to share my story to help other people out there because I find that so important now to help others out there. Basically, I've always had a profound spiritual connection to the subtle earth energies of Mother Earth, and in particular the ley lines. And even since birth, one of the most profound experiences I had was when I was just a few weeks old. I was diagnosed with a critical life condition, which needed a life-saving operation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived. But my mum, because she was an intuitive and you know, she didn't unfortunately progress her intuition and her skills that she had. She had an intuition that that operation would be far too dangerous for me to take in, too risky. So what she decided to do is because both my parents were of Polish descent, they decided just randomly to whisk me off over to Poland to a monastery that's located on top of a hill, which is known for its miraculous healings, which is the Polish equivalent of Lourdes in France, where miraculous healings have actually happened. So my mother, a few weeks old, took me to this monastery in Poland, and because she knew that I would be healed from this location because of the stories that she's heard about the miraculous healings on it. So she took me to the altar by this painting of the Black Madonna, which is known for its miraculous healings. And she showered me with unconditional love and prayed with a full open heart, knowing that I would receive healing from this location because there's a large because of healing place, there are an array of ley lines running through this place where they crisscross, creating an energy vortex, which is healing. So she vehemently prayed for me with an open heart. She had so much unconditional love while she was actually praying that she presented me to this altar, knowing that I would actually be healed, and I could actually still feel to today, that unconditional love from that moment in time. And then as soon as we got back, shortly after we got back to London, we went to the hospital where I was scheduled to have the operation. And what happened then was just like a miracle, because the initial inspection said there was actually nothing wrong, and the initial doctor couldn't understand why there was nothing wrong. So he had to seek the second decision from one of the most senior doctors that was available on shift, and he gave my mum the profound news that no operation was needed. I had made a full recovery without any rational explanation. So even a senior doctor said they're going to have to put this down as a miracle, because none of the doctors for this kind of condition that I had ever experienced the healing where an operation was not required. So, my mother giving that message from when he went to that miraculous healing place was like a godsend to her. And it's always been my life mission since that day to find out the true understanding of that healing and how that healing occurred, which is what eventually left me onto the work we actually do now with the earth energies and also the healing modalities that I do now.
Wow, that's so fascinating. My respect to your mom. She's had so much belief that healing will take place. And this just shows us the power of intention, right? Your mom had the intention to take you there so that healing can take place for you. And That is what happened. So the power of intention is amazing.
That's correct. The power of intention is absolutely, if you haven't got the intention, you will not get any results from it. And one of the key areas that people don't realize is if you do that with unconditional love through the heart chakra, completely unconditional, with nothing undermining it but pure conditional love, that tends to be a crucial element in any healings, for example, because that's what I see from my own experience and healing with clients is if you have that unconditional love from the heart, it's that key connection to the universe, to the quantum field, to God, the source, whatever you want to call it. That is a key to access that quantum field, which can lead to these miraculous healings.
Right. And so you talked about ley lines earlier. And so I want to ask you, what are ley lines and how do they relate to power spots on Earth?
Yeah, ley lines can be seen as the energy bloodlines, basically like the veins of the equivalent of a human body. But instead of obviously the earth having blood flowing through it, has energy running through it. So these ley lines, which are basically paths of energy, where there's a high concentration of these telluric, beneficial earth energies that usually flow between certain structures such as churches, cathedrals, megaliths, or natural structures such as mounds, mountains, certain trees as well, which are connected onto it. And there's been a lot of people think ley lines don't exist, but through all the research and my own experiences, that is undeniable that ley lines do actually exist from civilizations, from the Romans, Egyptians. They all use these energies in order to construct temples, churches for a reason at specific locations. And it's when these two energy lines, ley lines cross, it's at that cross where that energy becomes amplified so much stronger that that creates a vortex, which can be an area of healing, which is why churches, for example, are built on the crossings of ley lines because of the healing energy that they were originally intended to be designed for as a healing center, as well as a
Mhm.
place of worship in order for people to receive healing. So people don't realize the importance of ley lines.
Yeah, so my question is, how did people back in those times, ancient times, how did they know about the crossing of the energy lines underneath the earth? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it would have been through knowledge that was being foretold through father to son and other people, from word of mouth. But the skills that they would have used would have been a dowsing, which is one of the skills. So you can either use dowsing rods or a pendulum to douse and detect these energies and these energy lines, and then you
Hmm.
can decide from that. They'll, bishops, priests at the time, for example, would use dowsing in order to find a location where they would build a church because where those energy lines cross. And that was the only way that they could determine where those locations were.
Interesting. So do you do dowsing in your work?
I do dowsing, especially with my house healing modalities. Dowsing is the main method that I use for distance dowsing. So I don't have to attend to someone's house. I can use it from just dowsing a floor plan of the actual property in order to find out where the stress points are on there. So, it can be done remotely just as effectively as it can be going in person to a location and doing it.
Okay. So let me ask you this. So why would somebody call for your services? Like, what is the issue with their house before they call you? Let's talk a little
Yeah, a
bit
lot of
about the work you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, because a lot of people, when they live in a house, just don't feel comfortable in the house. There's something where they don't feel right in the house, within the general energy of the house. So if I give you an example, because you're looking out for a house at the moment, if you go around searching for a house, you find a house on paper which hits all the criteria that you require, but as soon as you step foot into that house, you feel that something's not quite right within the house, even though it could be, immaculately decorated to a high standard, ticking all your boxes. Something doesn't make you feel right about that house. You're on a subconscious level picking up a disturbance on that house that's not compatible with your energy field, which is why you're picking that up. So if people don't feel comfortable within their home, or their health starts to deteriorate, and they notice a difference when they're at home, that the health seems to be more deteriorating, whether they're in more pain, for example, or more fatigue in the house, then as soon as they step outside the house or go into an office which is located outside and they feel a lot better, that's usually a telltale sign that there could be something wrong with the actual house. And if people are waking up usually between the hours of 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning on a regular basis, that's another classic telltale sign that the house can be affected by these natural disturbances, which is also referred to as geopathic stress.
Okay, so yes, let's talk a little bit about geopathic stress because when you first mentioned it to me, I was like, what is geopathic stress? I've never heard of that before. So, yes, please elaborate further on geopathic stress, what causes it, and how can we resolve it?
Yeah, geopathic stress is a word derived from the Latin word of geo, meaning earth, and pathic, meaning energy. So basically, it's the natural, beneficial, telluric earth energies that are naturally emitted from the planet, from the ground, which are beneficial for health and survival. And any disturbance, any stresses to those natural disturbances, it could be man-made structures such as a cell phone tower, for example, man-made, that could be interfering with natural energy of the earth. So that could be classified as geopathic stress, as well as natural factors. So if there's a ley line running through someone's house and there was a battle taking place, a few hundred years ago, that energy of that battle and what happened there in the past could be a scar in the land. So that can be making those energies detrimental, which would have been positive previously and beneficial to life.
Wow. So the imprint of whatever has occurred in the past is also affecting us today.
Absolutely. And it's just the other things, for example, another common one is underground water streams. If there's an underground water stream under somebody's house, it could be 200-300 feet below the ground, but they're not aware of. Even having an underground water stream can be can be a stress point for geopathic stress because the frequencies and the way the energy is emitted from the earth gets distressed as soon as it reaches a ground level. And then it's that difference in that energy that could potentially be detrimental to human biology.
Okay, so how do we resolve these issues of geopathic stress? Like what you talked about,
Well,
how do we
yeah.
resolve it?
So one of the best ways to do it, if you're not sure what to do, is you can contact a house healer or even an energy healer, because some energy healers can also detect the disturbances of the houses and seek advice. But if you feel that something's not quite right, the best thing you can do is do whatever you can to try and make the overall energy feel a lot better. So if a room feels kind of humid, for example, if one room in a particular house feels more humid or colder than any other room for no rational explanation, that will usually be a sign that there could be something affecting that room. That could be a stress. So if you feel that, then do something to either increase the air circulation through the room so the air in the room isn't stagnant, so it flows freely, like have a window slightly ajar and have the door open so the air continues through, or think about installing extractor fans, exhausts in the house that are continuously on silently so that can extract any of that so you're not subjected to it, so the air continues to flow. And as well as decluttering, if you've got a lot of clutter in your house that you don't need, some of that can accumulate some of that negative energy. So make sure the house looks where the energy can actually flow. If you imagine like on the old discos where you had like the smoke machines, and if you were to let the smoke machine off, if there's any areas that would stagnate that smoke, then try to get the energies flowing as much as you can using natural elements such as plants, for example. Try and stick succulent plants in an area because that tends to transmute some of those negative energies as well. But any concerns for health, it's always best to seek the professional advice of a competent house healer or
Hmm.
energy healer to get that information.
So I would imagine that people who are looking to buy a house, they would need to contact you, right? Just to make sure that the energy of the house is good before they buy it. So what happens if somebody buys a house, right? They spend like, I don't know, $500,000 and they're having a lot of issues with the house. What would you do for this specific client?
Yeah, so what I would do initially is simply from having the address and a zip code, I can do a quick basic check using Google Earth and a number of online historical tools to see if there are any telltale signs of distress points anywhere where the house is located and of in close proximity with the land of the house and the neighborhood. So, from a knowledge of geology and geomancy, I'll be able to initially spot if there are any natural disturbances caused by historical quarry, for example, in the area, or any natural disturbances to the land, will just stick out like a sore thumb to me. And then I'll do further investigations to see if that affects the house. And then once I find out what the problem is, I'll find out the exact energy frequency when it first enters the property. And once that's established, then I'll find a resonant frequency that is usually 11 times higher than what it's coming in. And what that does is it transmutes those frequencies so that basically no negative energies can actually go into the house from that point. It's the equivalent of if you have two magnets, for example, you have the two poles which contract to each other. So if you've got a distress point coming into a house and somebody's got underlying health issues, for example, or weakened cells for whatever reason, those two energies are going to connect to each other and potentially make the cells worse over time and create long-term health issues such as cancer and dementia. So simply by changing and transmuting the frequency when it first enters the house, it's the equivalent of flipping the magnetic pole round. So then those two energies don't interact and they get repelled from the house, in effect protecting the people within the house, as well as having the effect of a Faraday cage around the house. So the energy just, instead of hitting into the house, it hits the side of the house, the perimeter, but then it doesn't actually enter the living spaces of the people.
Wow, that's so fascinating. So when you do this resolution for your clients, is it like a permanent resolution or do you need to kind of like come back again and do it maybe like 6 months down the road?
Yeah, it's a permanent solution because obviously energy always changes. One day it could be one level, the next day it could be another due to any number of factors. But because we're changing it to 11 times greater than what is, it will always be 11 times greater. So if those energies change, they'll always be kind of 11 times higher than what they are. So that's a permanent solution for the clients. But then if anything comes up in 6 months' time, for example, um, the local authorities or the government decide to stick a cell phone tower, for example, outside your house. If something like that happens and the energy, people notice the energy going down, and as part of my full service, I offer free additional checks further down the line for the next 5 years as long as it's the same property. So if there are any changes or anything does come up after when we've done the initial healing, subsequently, then that's all covered for the occupants as well,
Right. So it's
guaranteed.
in,
So it's just a one cure.
oh, nice, nice. Yeah. So it's interesting that you bring up the cell phone tower because like you said, I'm looking for a house and I've we found a really nice house. But then like I want to say like 100 feet behind the house, there was a cell phone tower. So I guess you would advise against buying a house that's in close proximity to a cell phone tower. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, I would, from my experience, I would advise anybody buying a house within close proximity. They can't help it for whatever reason or gets built in after. Then there are, remedial actions that can be taken to avoid it. But if you're actually looking for a house and you see a cell phone tower on it, that should be a telltale sign, for people, to possibly look for other properties because that might not be suitable for them. But if they find that's the only place that's suitable for them, then obviously if they call in the house healer, then they'll be able to do the remedial actions and give the recommendations on what they can do to reduce their exposure. So for a 5G tower, for example, one of the best resolutions would be is to go to your local hardware store and purchase EMF protection paint. So basically,
Oh,
that's like your regular paint, but it's got crystal elements in it to help transmute some of those frequencies. So the walls facing where the 5G tower is, if you just paint those walls with that EMF paint, that can reduce it by around about 80% of the EMF emitted from the cell phone tower, for example. So there are other options, and it's always best to seek advice from a house healer or look online to see if you can actually find any information out there.
wow, I'm learning so much from you today. So you said EMF paint. I've never heard of that before. So
People aren't aware of it, so yeah, it's important to.
so the EMF paint goes on the exterior of the house or interior of the house?
Yeah, you can have paint that's either for exterior or you can have it for the interior for like your regular emulsion paint. So it's just, if your house is painted from the outside, then it's best to advise it from the outside. If it's just plain brick, for example, then you can just use that internal paint. Or if you can't if you can't find a paint, then just use a crystal, like a black crystal, such as a Shanghai or black Ondensman, place it within on the ground level where that thing is, and that can reduce some of it as well. With a set intention to transmute some of the frequencies from it, that
Mm.
can also have an impact.
So is there a specific size on the crystal that we should get? Like, I'm talking about a small crystal
It,
or like a
yeah,
large one?
the size doesn't matter. So it could just be, you don't have to spend hundreds of pounds on a crystal. You could just go to your local new age shop, for example, crystal shop, and pick up one for about $5 or $6. It can just be a small one, and that can be just as effective because of
Wow.
the properties contained within that crystal.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So amazing. I love, love, love the work that you're doing. So let's talk a little bit about trees because you mentioned earlier that plants can transmute the energy inside the home, right? And so what about trees? Let's talk a little bit about beautiful trees. I love trees.
Yeah, trees are important because I believe that a tree saved my life when I was living in the family home when I was growing up. Because at the age of 20, I lost both my parents within 19 months of each other because the house was severely affected by geopathic stress. And one of the main contributing factors was radon gas because of the granite contained under the house, because it was built
Mm.
very close to a historical granite quarry. So in the early 90s, we had the detection monitors there, and it confirmed that radon was present on it. But obviously, we didn't know at the time. And then, since the work I got into, I realised that was a contributing factor. And as well as they slept in a bedroom where there were two stress points of geopathic stress, an underground water stream and an energy line crossing, and they slept on the actual bed. And the bed was a solid half a ton, old-fashioned bed, real solid metal springs in the base. That was amplifying those that disturbed the geopathic stress that was causing the health issues. So as soon as we moved into the house, my dad started having health issues immediately, pretty much immediately. He was diagnosed with diabetes as soon as within a few months of moving in, that he had to go into hospital, to get that sorted out. And then it started to deteriorate so badly that he had to go into a care home. So my mother then moved to his side of the bed. And as soon as she moved in, within a few weeks, she got diagnosed with breast cancer because of that disturbance when she actually moved on it. And unfortunately, she passed away within the 2 or 3 months after the diagnosis because it spread so much. And then my father passed away 19 months after. So I didn't realize, what was causing that. So I always wanted to find the answers. What potentially caused the death of my parents so close? Because I thought, there has to be an explanation. And then even my brother was diagnosed with long-term health issues that he still suffers from today because he was living in that house. So what I decided to do is to find the answers, what actually caused it. And for my own research, the only reason why I was not the only person in the house that wasn't affected by it was where my bedroom was located. There was a golden cedar tree right outside the bedroom window. That cedar tree was transmuting those negative frequencies of the geopathic stress and the radon gas where my bedroom was located. Because I've got evidence to back up. Because once my parents died, the next door neighbour started complaining the tree was blocking too much light and was going onto his land, affecting his foundations. So I decided to chop it down. And as soon as I chopped it down, the next door neighbour, he started having health issues shortly after that tree was chopped down. And even our house unfortunately got burgled as soon as that broken into, as soon as that tree got cut down. And I've noticed from doing the research from people, if they've had a conifer tree, for example, outside the house and they've had it knocked down, that they've started having health issues because the benefit of trees are there's a transmuter of these negative energies. So it's so important. If you've got any like evergreen trees such as conifers and they're growing really, really well, chances are that that land in the area is affected by geopathic stress, and those trees are transmuting some of that detrimental energies. So it's important to make sure, if you need to cut a tree back to seek advice from someone to see if there is any geopathic stress, and if there is, if you can avoid cutting the tree back or do remedial actions in order to mitigate some of those stresses when that tree's cut down, because those negative energies will amplify and that could potentially affect people's health.
Yeah, it's so amazing because we don't realize the service that trees are doing to humanity, right? And we're
Absolutely.
just oblivious to what's happening underground or what the trees are doing for us. And so if a tree is transmuting all those energies from underground Mother Earth, and for example, if a tree gets unwell, what are some signs and symptoms that we can look out for to know that a tree is unwell?
Yeah, so if a tree is unwell, one of the best signs to look out for is look to see at the structure of the tree. So if it's not growing in, that the trunk is not going straight, but it's going at different angles, and it's got some of those cankers, which are like these bulbs in a tree trunk, which are like bulbs, that's referred to as tree cancer. So
Uh-huh.
if you see any evidence of that and it's not growing as well as it should because the leaves, the foliage isn't as great as it should be, and and the height of it isn't growing as much as you'd expect it to be, they tend to be a usual telltale sign that that tree is affected by geopathic stress. And certain trees will show more signs than others. So if you've got like deciduous trees, for example, they will have more stress. Whereas the evergreen trees, they won't show as much stress, but they'll grow much quicker than these deciduous trees, for example.
Right.
So it's important to look out nature and look out for telltale signs of any stresses.
So if we find a tree that is not well, what do you recommend we do? Cut it down or let it be? Like, for example, the tree is absorbing and transmuting the energy from Mother Earth, right? So maybe if
Yeah,
we cut it down, we're probably going to do more harm than good. So what would you recommend we do?
that's correct. So yeah, so if the tree's structurally sound, where it's not going to fall over or potentially damage other property, then it's best to leave the tree as it is.
Okay.
Because if you were to remove that tree, that would cause more stress on those disturbances, and that can potentially affect human health, especially if it's in your backyard, for example. And if there's a stress point that's running directly through where the tree is, and then in your house, removing that tree, some of that mitigation is going to be eradicated, and it's going to go straight through to your house. So if you had no health conditions previously, you might start having health conditions from that point because of that amplified disturbance that could potentially be entering your house.
So what about if we plant more trees? Will that
So
help?
that it would certainly help you plant more trees, and you need to know what trees to plant in certain areas. So, for example, a tree that everybody's familiar with the oak tree, for example. An oak tree, which is a deciduous tree, would actually thrive in an area of geopathic stress because they would only grow in that area.
Um,
Whereas if you had another tree like a birch tree, for example, that would be stressed, or fruit tree, that would be stressed, and that won't survive very well. So, planting oak trees is usually a good idea, as well as evergreen trees, because they're the ones that tend to be more transmusive of those disturbances.
okay, so if I just bought a house and say my garden, my backyard is bare and it doesn't have any trees, and I would like to plant a tree. However, I don't know which spot would be the most ideal spot to plant a tree. Is that something that you can help me with?
It is, yeah, because I can advise from Google Earth or even floor plan, I can advise you on the best spots I can douse to find out the best position for that particular tree where it would best be suited. So if it needs a part of geopathic stress in order to survive, then I'll select an area which is close to that kind of stress that will help it fuel it to help it to grow. Or if it's to transmute those frequencies, then obviously I'll advise you what would be the best point to plant that tree in order to avoid any disturbances as well. So
So if we do have to cut down a tree, what ritual would you suggest that we do before cutting down the tree?
yes, I would basically, if you can, get an energy healer to do a ritual for it, either in person or remotely, or if you're comfortable doing that, just go towards the tree, connect with the energy of the field of the tree, put your hands on the trunk and just set an intention saying, a positive intention for the tree that, thanking the tree for everything that's contributed for humanity, for human health and nature and everything like that. And just give it like an intention or even what you might call as a prayer, basically, towards that tree, giving it gratitude and thank you, and saying that, that you're going to help the tree along in its next evolutionary journey by, by helping its transition in order to, to carry on surviving and produce that beneficial energy to help, in a larger scale, giving a kind of set intention, because then that way it reduces some of that energy of that tree. Because if you just cut down a tree randomly, it's going to have release natural stress. Well, they're not hormones in trees, but the energy field will have stress energy coming basically in opposed to it. It's a bit like if a tree cutter goes into the woods with a giant chainsaw, stuff like that, the tree would pick up on that energy knowing it's going to be cut down. Whereas if somebody goes in there, instead of just cutting it down with a chainsaw, sets an intention on it, it's not going to be as detrimental to the energy that's left on the tree. And then if you can, plant a replacement tree in its place so that you've still got something in place, or put another plant on in its place in order to keep that energy going.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I so love trees. They're very wise beings, aren't they?
They
And so, okay, I know we've been talking a lot about what you do in your business. So let's talk a little bit more about your practice, like the name of your practice, how you work with clients, and how can people find you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, so I work with clients internationally all over the world with one of the modalities is remote house healing. So basically, all I would require from someone is initially the zip code and the address of the property. So I can bring up on applications such as Google Earth, for example, to find out if there are any basic disturbances to the actual area of it. And then if anything is detected, it's just from a simple floor plan of the property, just a roughly drawn plan. And then I'll use a modality which is called dowsing in order to find out distress points. And it's almost a 100-point checklist that I do now to identify natural and man-made disturbances that could be affecting the property from my years of experience and knowledge of what to look out for. And then put all the remedies and cure for people, transmute those frequencies so that their house is the equivalent of a healing sanctuary from those distress energies, so they can the health of the occupants can be improved, and also help the body naturally to start recovering from any long-term effects of living in a distressed house, as well as preventing people from getting long-term health issues due to long-term exposure of those disturbances as well. So that's done, all online through Zoom consultations, and then I'll give you a full report of exactly what's gone on, explain all the findings, and then as part of the service, I offer a guarantee for the next 5 years. If there are any additional checks that need to be carried out at a later date because there are some changes in the locality, or somebody puts a 5G tower, cell phone tower up, for example, then any additional cures after that date can be done free of charge as well for the clients as well. So,
Nice. So what is the name of your business?
yeah, so my business is called Alchemy Spectrum. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, the best way is to go into my website, alchemyspectrum.com, and just to message me through there, contact me, just click on that tab and then just send me a message.
Nice. So before we wrap up here, I'm curious, have you worked with any quote unquote haunted houses?
Actually, not haunted houses, because there was a house I done not so long ago that was used to be in England. It used to be a public house, like a bar. And it used to be a place that, I'm not sure if you heard of this infamous character from the UK called Aleister Crowley. So a lot of Americans may have heard of him as an occult person. He used to drink in one of these pubs. And this guy actually bought this pub and converted it into a house, into a dwelling. So we actually went in, and that energy was still actually present from that entity that was from that person. It was actually there. It was still present in the land, and it
Wow.
has started having an effect on the person who lived in that house. So we cleared all that energy, and then the health started to improve from that person. So it just goes to show.
Yeah, wow. This just tells me like we really don't know the imprints on an area, on a location, on a house, on the land. I mean, Mother Earth has been around for like, I want to say trillions of years, maybe.
Yeah,
And so, like, imprint upon imprint, it blows my mind actually to think
absolutely. Because
about that.
Yeah, because in my comprehensive checks, one of the things I look for is some history of the house. So for historical imagery, overlaying maps, it can determine what was there previously, where the house was, because that will still affect, 200, 300 years down the line. It can still have an effect, especially if they build a brand new house on the land where there used to be a quarry or a coal mine, for example. That can still, the energy can still be affected for 200, 300 years after that mine has actually closed, for example. So by knowing that information, we can put remedies in place so it doesn't affect the people living in the home.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, you are doing such sacred work. It came through to me that for me to say this, that you are doing such sacred work and to keep going because you are healing Mother Earth, you're healing the land, you're healing people. And so, yeah, it is such an honor to connect with you today. So, I have a signature closing question here. This is my final question for you today. What is your closing message for humanity to help in our collective healing and empowerment?
Yeah, so what I would advise is people to fill their own cup up first. So what I mean by that is work on your own energy to raise your energy from the frequency of fear, which is what society, the mainstream media, they always bombard people with fear and stuff to try and lower the collective energy and vibration. So if you do whatever you can to work your own energy to that frequency of unconditional love, you will be healing yourself. And once you start healing yourself, you can then help heal other people. And one of the best ways that I found, which I can give to the listeners to this podcast, is just spend 1 hour a day focusing on whatever you can do to raise your own energy. It could be meditation, for example, doing a practice, a self-care practice for yourself. Or if some people find it difficult to meditate, have that concentration, is to engage in the daily walk in nature. So for half an hour a day, an hour a day, go out for a walk in nature and don't just walk in nature, but try and connect with it. So look at the wildlife, look at the views, go and put your hands on a tree, hug a tree for a few minutes just to try and connect with Mother Nature and Gaia. Because I guarantee that if you follow that practice consistently over a period of a year, you'll be less stressful and you'll be connecting more of your own high frequency and vibration of unconditional love, that connection with nature. So, and with that, for 12 months, I'll guarantee that a lot of people would raise their consciousness by by 2 or 3 notches, simply by participating in that exercise and connecting with nature every day. So that's what I would recommend people to do. Get out in nature, get away from the screens, and get out there for half an hour a day consistently, and you will feel a difference. As long as you have that intention to connect with nature, that will amplify things.
Yes, I so love that and I so resonate with that. And I just want to add, raising human consciousness was never meant to be hard. It's so easy to just raise
But
your consciousness. Like you said, just take a walk outside and connect with everything around you. Mother Gaia is all about
yes,
unconditional love. So unconditional
absolutely.
love is present in our reality all day, every day. Is a matter of whether we want to connect with it.
And everybody's got access to it. Nobody there hasn't got access to it. It's just a case of consciously connecting to it with the intention. And that's what people need to do. Just realize, connect with nature.
Yeah. Thank you, Adam, so
Okay.
much for this beautiful conversation. I'm so glad that we brought to light this issue that I want to say maybe many people don't know about. So this conversation was divinely guided, I feel. And so thank you for being here today and for sharing your light, your energy, and your wisdom with me and our audience. I am so thrilled to connect with you today. And please carry on the phenomenal work that you're doing for
I won't be stopping.
humanity.
I'll be doing it for the rest of my life. So I found my purpose. So thank
I'm
you.
glad to hear that. So, for everybody who's watching and listening, thank you for your time. And until next time, bye for now.